Hey Blockheads, we've got a Patreon now. We would really appreciate your support to help us keep this podcast going. There's a link in the description below, so check it out. Now on to the episode. Yeehaw! Welcome to Creative Block. We're your hosts, Gene
and V. We interview people in the animation industry about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We asked people on Twitter if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
And today with us, we have Joe Sparrow.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello, Joe.
Hello. How's it going?
Hello.
Hi, so excited.
I gave you the most American intro I could.
Yes. Well,
and you are the furthest thing from America.
I am. Yeah. You've had other non-Americans on your podcast before, right?
Yeah. We've had a handful.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple.
And that's always an interesting thing to ask about because it's not super common that people work in animation in other countries, but it's totally a viable thing to do. Like, it's totally something that can happen. And so we love to talk to people that are working remotely and how they kind of got in. And you're one of those people.
I am.
So tell us who you are, what you do, and where you live.
So I'm Joe Sparrow. I describe myself as an artist, a writer. I work in animation and design for animation primarily, and I also write and draw comics on the side. Yeah, I kind of do. I hop from one to the other. I've tended to find the last few years it's been kind of long stints of animation work for the money.
Yeah.
And then because I don't really, I don't want to, I'm not being completely dismissive of it, but like I make less money from comics.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. So I sort of take a break from animation work usually every couple of years at this rate, to make one of those.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's my rhythm at the moment.
Yeah, comics don't pay well at all. Until you get like a movie deal or something. It's like
that's the goal. That's like something I would really.
Oh,
like,
really? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, maybe one day. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Because I do. Yeah, like friends of mine have pitched animated series and stuff like that, and I kind of like the idea of doing like a comic first and then having that to sort of pitch to animation studios and stuff like that, just because I feel like if I'd at that point I'd have a product that I'd say like, hey, look at this is working, it would maybe skip some of the steps in the pitching process.
It helps. Yeah
I think
it helps.
Like figuring out the characters so much, like just like, I don't know how you work, Joe, but I feel like when I draw, it helps me a lot understanding kind of what the story is about and kind of like what the I don't know how you kind of approach writing in that sense. We're kind of like skipping ahead.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, sorry. I find with writing and drawing, it's always a back and forth process. So like I'll usually come up with ideas kind of in the abstract as like writing ideas, as like ideas for stories and stuff like that. But then at some point I'll have to bite the bullet and attempt to actually like render that into artwork. And usually the process of doing that will lead to more ideas, which you can then kind of go back into the writing and develop a little bit. And it's just like sort of hopping from one to the other. That's for comics and stuff anyway. Like,
right.
I feel like I can't speak on kind of writing for animation as much because I haven't done like nearly as much of that.
Yeah, comics and animation are two very different things that like intertwine very easily, and so I find it interesting that like how many comic artists have kind of come over, or how many people work in animation have come from comics, because it's a lot of the same like principles and stuff. I think we have gotten ahead of ourselves. Maybe we should take it.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, let's go back to your childhood.
Okay, yeah.
But more like kind of like let's see kind of what your journey was, in terms of like did you always know you wanted to get into art? Kind of what was your relationship to drawing growing up, and how did you kind of pursue it kind of throughout school and kind of all the way to college?
Yeah, so I've always had a pretty strong, like I've always I've drawn for a long time, like since I was a kid, I guess. So my dad, like both my parents are pretty artistic, so I'm definitely one of those people who I didn't have to like sort of persuade my parents that this was like a sort of viable thing for me to do like at all.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. Like I appreciate a lot of people have that, and it's like, you know, it can be kind of troublesome. But yeah, my dad in particular was like a storyboard artist, or he's like an amazing just draftsman in general. But in like the 80s and 90s, he got in with some like studios in London and worked on just like storyboarding a lot of sort of commercial animation, like TV sort of adverts and stuff like that.
Sure,
mostly. So seeing that he was like, it was like I could see him doing that and see him making a living from that, and it was like, oh, so that's a completely viable way of making a living, you know. So yeah, that's always been a thing. Oh, somebody's drawing the arm.
I'm drawing the yeah. It's just a branch.
Yeah,
that's all it is. David Lynch, you madman.
Yeah.
I saw that prompt and I was like, what's the arm? Because I haven't really watched Twin Peaks. I mean, I guess I have in the background, but I just don't remember what that was. And it's like, it's just a branch.
Yeah.
It's like like bubble gum on it. Like anyway.
Exactly.
Anyway. Yeah, I love people's prompts. It helps me because like, I don't know, I already draw all day for a living, and so then like seeing what people want us to draw, it's like I would never think to draw the arm from Twin Peaks.
Right.
And so
yeah.
I appreciate it. Shout out to our fans.
I haven't even gotten that far into Twin Peaks, so I'm just gonna copy what you guys are drawing.
Yeah, it's just a branch. But anyway, sorry. Yeah, we keep going off course.
You were talking about your dad, and like you saw him like drawing like storyboards for like commercial animation. That's really cool.
That's like super helpful to have. I also am lucky enough to have like artistic-ish parents, even though neither of them are like visual artists, but they're like musically inclined, and so they knew the struggles, but they also knew that it's fulfilling, and so they were always like, it's nice to have that kind of parental support, and it probably isn't that common to have, and it's, I think, like especially with the American TV industry, like not a lot of people know how to get in, not a lot of people think it's even a viable career. And so I'm curious, like also how it was like in the UK, and like what your parents kind of perceived as like the successful track for an artist, if that makes sense.
So obviously my dad was pretty, I think he's generally the kind of, he's always been the kind of person who's just been encouraging me of kind of anything creative, really. So I think he'd be happy with me doing like anything, as long as I was kind of happy and creatively fulfilled and stuff, which is really awesome.
Yeah. That's really sweet.
My mom was like kind of the same. Like she was always really happy, like kind of whatever I was doing artistically. But I think specifically with her, I remember, I think because they both came from kind of more, I want to say, working class backgrounds, and they were both like, my mum, I think, I don't know, like I think she wanted a bit more kind of like legitimacy to it. Like I just have this thing where I remember her really wanting me to be an architect for some reason, or like just because I used to really enjoy drawing, or just like enjoy geometry and really like precise little, you know, like drawings. I can see that,
yeah,
for that kind of thing. So yeah, that might make sense.
It does. But it is also kind of architecture, I feel like, is one of those like a non-artist can comprehend that as a career. It's like the closest thing to a lot of people. That's so true. You know, it's like when you like, I definitely know, I have family friends that like their kids wanted to get into art, and they're like, well, then you're gonna get into architecture. It's like that's the path.
Yeah.
You want to make a paycheck? That's the path. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah. I think there's something as well about it, like the idea of like permanence with architecture as well, like because obviously animation and cartoons and comics and stuff. I mean, I guess comics you get like physical, they're physical media at least, but I think with animation they're kind of, it's like ephemeral, right? Whereas if you're the notion of designing a building is like something that's going to be there for like 20 years, 30 years, really, really long time potentially.
I also think like the reality is that architecture is kind of like higher art kind of way, you know what I'm saying? Like whereas like comics and animation is like low art kind of. I think there's like a lot of that, at least in Europe, is kind of how I would see it. It's like, oh, you like, you know, architecture, maybe one day you'll get to draw the Sydney Opera building or whatever, which is like, no, this is not how architecture works. But I don't know, there's like this perception of like, it's so funny. And so you were talking about like, your mom was like thinking architecture for you.
Just like I said, because I've always like enjoyed more kind of precise drawing, to my detriment sometimes, because I feel like sometimes I need to, or it's been a bit of a struggle to kind of learn relaxing about drawing a little bit of it, especially over the last few years. Like I feel like I'm kind of getting it, but it's been, like I said, it's definitely been like a struggle to kind of figure that out. And I do feel like the art that I produce it tends to get better the more kind of chilled out I am about it. So that is like a good thing for me to bear in mind, I think.
Elaborate on what you mean by that. Like, do you mean sort of just like drawing for yourself more?
I think it's like drawing without caring overly about the outcome or about the quality of the outcome. Because I think I'm definitely somebody who gets like paralyzed sometimes with like the potential of like, oh god, what if I draw this thing and it just doesn't work out?
Absolutely,
which is by no means, that's by no means unique to just me. But like it's something that I feel quite strongly a lot of the time.
Like a lot of people do.
And it is, like I said, like sometimes it's like it's kind of exemplified by that classic social media thing of like, sometimes you'll have this piece of art that you've like sweated over for like hours and hours and hours, and you've put like tons of effort into it, and you've redrawn it a ton of times, and it like and it just doesn't like, well, people like it, but it doesn't like light people on fire. Like it doesn't like. Whereas sometimes just like the little napkin drawing that you draw sometimes just has like some magic to it, and I think it's kind of that, like that's like the two ends of that spectrum. But I think it's good to be able to like get a bit of both of those, I guess.
I think a lot of people feel that way. It's tough, and I also think that like I thought you were gonna mention the way that social media, like, people are always showing their best stuff and acting like it's not the best stuff, and so it's like that just adds to the paralyzing of like, I don't know. I have a real hard time with posting sketches and like rough drawings. I don't know about you, but
that's a big part of it. There's been I've been trying to sort of do that a lot more over the last couple of years, especially, and it's heartening. Like now that I've gotten a little bit more of an audience, like I've literally in the last like 2 years, I feel like I've built up a bit more of a sort of an audience on social media, and it's always really heartening when people do respond positively to that kind of work. So it's like, it's helpful. It's like people do want to see. People don't always want to just see your best, your like most perfect work. Sometimes they do want to see your little throwaway sketches or whatever,
Yeah, it's really funny. Like I love seeing behind the scenes stuff and people's sketches and doodles and rough work, and I absolutely hate showing mine. I don't know. I know people would want to see it, like I'm like, it's totally like a fear. I went to the this is a tangent, but I went to the LA Contemporary Museum of Art recently, only because they have a Yoshitomo Nara exhibit right now, and it was awesome. Like, I don't really like contemporary art, and most of that museum was a snooze fest to me, but there had a whole floor of Yoshitomo Nara, and like, it was nice because for me it was like, this dude just draws the same like angry squishy girl, and like and like has made a fucking career out of it. But that aside, I mean, they're beautiful paintings, and they're huge too. It's one of those things where you don't realize how big they are. But it's all appealing, but also like they had a lot of like his sketches and rough work where it's just literally like a shitty piece of canvas that he like drew on with a paint marker, and it's like kind of beautiful, like in a very expressive, like truly artistic way, and I'm like, man, I gotta just like draw more. I don't know. It was like I like came out of it really inspired because I have those same hangups, and going through that museum was like, oh man, like yeah, maybe I should just like let go a little bit and not worry about like the commercialism of like what am I putting out there? How will people perceive it, and how is it gonna make me money? Like we've definitely been, I feel like, kind of warped by that.
I feel like, yeah, I don't know. Also, like, I feel that a little bit less in the US, but when I was in France, I feel like there's a lot of like, I don't know, expectations, or at least in college, of out of drawings, right? Like, or like that people would be more likely to like critique, like, oh, here's all the things that are wrong with your drawing. And it can make it kind of harder to just like, be like, hey, I'm just gonna have fun and not care about anything. But yeah, automatic drawing has been something that's always been kind of like a lifesaver for me, like automatic drawing and life drawing, because then like the expectations for those are like much lower, I guess. Like life drawing is like, oh, there's like something right in front of my face that I can just draw and not really think too hard about. Yeah.
No, totally. I actually think, from my perspective, I'd be interested to hear what you guys, because I guess V, you went to university in France, or you went in the US, right? Because and Jean, presumably you went in the US, right? Because in like, so the university I went to, I did like a sort of combined animation illustration course.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was great. I really enjoyed it. But I feel like some of the way those, at least the place I went to, kind of does critique. It's a tricky one, because it's like, I think part of your like uni experience as an artist, I think should be kind of, you should be going there and getting all of your preconceptions kind of broken down a little bit, because I think you do need to be broken down to then build up something interesting with your art a little bit. But I do think that environment maybe fostered a slightly overcritical sort of brain when I'm looking at my own art, possibly, or it contributed to that. I'm not like blaming it on that like solely. I think I have plenty of other sort of neuroses and stuff about my own drawing that are separate from that. But I think we were like really pushed to sort of have the best, I think particularly with ideas, more than like the quality of the drawing necessarily. It was always like, no, that idea isn't strong enough, you need to come up with a better idea from that. And we would like board stuff like animations and board them like, over and over again, and every week you'd be coming in trying to show to your tutor, you know, and trying to sell them on these ideas that you were coming up with, and it would be really disheartening. Sorry, I've made that sound really miserable, but like it wasn't that bad. It's just like something that I've, you know.
No, but I totally agree with what you're saying, and I think that's something that I do like enjoy talking about, not to like wallow and be like, oh, like my life was so hard, but just to be like, I think it's a reality, right? It's like a reality that like, depending on the way people will critique art, it can inspire you, or it can like what's the word, just it can make your, it can break your spirits a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Like, and some people, like depending on your personality, for some people it can like light a fire under your butt, but for some other people it can just kind of break you and just be like, well, I guess I like kind of like give up, right? And I mean, I relate to kind of what you're saying, because I do feel like for me going to school in France, it like it felt very harsh. Like the critique were good. Like they were, it was there to help me grow more, but they were also like really harsh, and it's kind of like, it kind of makes you feel like you're not good enough. But then it's like, also I think it's maybe a culture thing, because when I moved to the US and like hang out with people out here, like I find the spirit to be a lot more like nurturing. Like the critiques are more nurturing, like kind of like in the idea of like making you grow, more than breaking you. And I don't know if you've read Luke Healy's Americana, but I think he kind of touches a little bit on that in there's a page where he says like, oh, I feel more like, or does he write it? I feel like less critical of myself or something like that. And that really resonated with me. So I don't know if that's something that I don't know if I'm going on a tangent or if that's relatable or if,
No. Yeah, no, totally. I think that's the one comic of his that I haven't read, but I think I know what you're describing. One thing that always stuck in my mind that makes me laugh now is that because obviously university is always kind of stressful, and so people would like sometimes people would complain at the sort of how strict the crits were, and sometimes they would, like, in hindsight, sometimes they would cross the line and be a bit nasty. I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. I really don't mean to shit talk my old university.
Oh, but we love it.
Yeah. No, it's not so much about the university. It's more like, I would say, like, maybe like a culture thing, I guess. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But one of the ways that I think I remember one of the tutors saying, like, oh, if you can't handle this, you're never going to be able to make it out in the real, in the industry. And for all, and I've never, I don't know, maybe I've just had like a particularly privileged kind of run through the sort of this industry, but people are so much nicer outside of university, and like really not, like people want to give you the kind of the benefit of the doubt with your ideas and stuff like that. I'm sure that like that's probably a lot to do with the quality of like the people that I've worked with and stuff like that, and I have been incredibly lucky to work with some very, very nice people.
It could be a generation thing as well. I don't know. Sometimes maybe. I think about it, like, maybe like 20 years ago, the animation biz was just like way harsher, I guess.
Yeah, well, there's sort of like gatekeeping. I don't know. Yeah, it's the mentality of like, you better man up and get in. And it's like, and I think that's fallen away because people I have learned empathy a little more.
I think so. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And that's good.
It is good.
It's a good thing.
What were some of your like who knew that empathy is a good thing? What's some of your like earliest creative projects in like uni or around that time that you can remember?
So I graduated in 2010, which is 11 years ago, which is crazy.
That was the year that I graduated.
Oh wow.
Oh nice. I feel like a lot of the people I'm making friends with, like in a lot of people are graduated around that time that I know. It's cool. But yeah, so the course was an illustration animation course. It was 3 years. Do you have BAs, like Bachelor of the Arts?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, sorry, I'm never sure what sort of carries over into education stuff. But I got really, so I went there with like some enthusiasm with a lot of enthusiasm, like wanting to draw. I specifically wanted to do an animation or a course that had animation on it because I wanted to do comics, and I understood that like storyboards were kind of close to comics,
right?
And I knew that I figured if I did like a course with some animation sort of part to it, it would improve my comics. So that was what I went there to do, and then I ended up kind of falling in love with animation more so even than just storyboarding, like making stuff move. However, I feel like in the second and third year I got really stuck in a kind of like in that like trap for sort of burgeoning artists of like, what style do I draw in, like how do I draw
yes, the style,
that kind of stuff.
It
was a rough one. And so in my second and third year I ended up doing a ton of like, I kind of became like a stop motion animator. Like,
that's so cool.
I ended up kind of doing a bunch of stop motion projects. And I've never been, it's kind of weird because I've never been very good with like practical media, like making stuff. Like I could never do like woodwork or anything like that when I was a kid. So what I would do is I would find there were like other people in my animation class who were really good at that kind of stuff. So I would basically get them to make these make practical elements like little figurines or whatever, and then I would just do the animation side of it and comping and stuff like that. And
that is so cool,
and that allowed me to just get away, like I kind of just put away the problem for a bit, just not to think about drawing at all. So I think there's maybe like one or two of those projects still about on Vimeo. I remember everyone was using Vimeo at the time, so that's kind of where they've all ended up. I'm trying to think of anything, and then I ended up just doing like, after uni I did kind of a lot of compositing stuff, so like After Effects sort of stuff for ages, which is really weird now. And then at some point I just sort of decided that I really wanted, like, I kind of reminded myself, like, oh yeah, I did this because I enjoy drawing, because like when I was a kid I would like drawing, so I made after a few years I sort of made a concerted effort to actually take drawings that take jobs that involved me drawing more, and got more comfortable with it that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you took a serious break away from art and then came back to it.
Well, like, drawing specifically, but it was good. It honestly, it allowed me to I think it allowed me to kind of live in London. It was the thing that allowed me to sort of pay my way in London, which is like an expensive city to live in.
Sure.
I'm not as convinced, basically because I learned After Effects really well, and I, like, to the extent where I could kind of do a lot of different roles. I kind of functioned like a generalist, and I think that meant that I got work really easily, or like quite consistently, quite soon after uni.
Is it like commercial work?
Yeah. So all, like, after I left uni, it was all like commercials and music videos almost exclusively.
Okay. That's still cool though. That's still like creative.
Yeah, no, totally. And it paid the bills. So
and it pays the bills.
Yeah.
Did
it kind of like, did you have enough like time to yourself to kind of like maybe think about ideas or like drawing comics, or were you just kind of still in that phase of like, can't touch that?
No. So after a couple of years of doing that, I think in 2011, we've been going to like comics conventions quite a lot in the UK. Mostly there's one that's kind of it's like the San Diego kind of Comic-Con kind of Comic Cons in the UK. It's called MCM. I'm not sure what MCM actually stands for, but like it's just called the MCM London. They do them all over. They do them in Manchester and Birmingham, like all the major cities. And we always used to go to those because, you know, it's just like a fun thing to do when we were at uni. And I would always go to the Artist Alley, and there was just that feeling of like looking at what the people there were doing and just thinking to myself, like, I should really do this. I should really like make like a little comic just for myself and sell it at one of these tables. And then I went through a period of like, I can't remember what it was that got me onto it. I think it was maybe playing Cave Story. I think I played Cave Story.
Hell yeah.
Do you know that game?
Oh, do I know Cave Story?
Yeah, it's really good. It's so hard though. Yeah.
It is very difficult.
Maybe if you're not amazing. Like me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so you play Cave Story.
I will say. Oh. Yeah, I never played that. I never finished the final, like the Hell.
Yeah, I committed and I did finish Hell. I do not brag without purpose. I put the time in on that. God. It's Cave Story is sick. I really think it's like a little work of art. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's all produced by like one guy.
Yeah,
right?
one dude. Pixel.
I can't remember what.
Dice KMI, I think his name is.
Yeah. So I played that, and I like basically got into doing like kind of pixel art, but like specifically pixel art inspired by the way he does stuff in that game, because like I feel like there's a lot of people who get into pixel art who get into it in like, I want to say there's like the Metal Slug pixel art, and then there's like the Cave Story pixel art.
Yes.
Like, Cave Story I really appreciate because it used a lot of these like big flat kind of colors, and like the bright sort of flat colors was like the name.
It's very chunky.
Which I really, really like.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love Metal Slug with all my heart, but it's very, very different. It's like I feel like most of the stuff I saw over the years was like going more in the Metal Slug direction. It was like more detail, you know.
Metal Slug is harder to approach. I think it's like you have to have a real mastery over pixel art to like to pull off that look. Like those people are nuts. But Cave Story, it's just like, it feels more like I I guess simple, but definitely expressive. Like it's just big, like you said, big blocks of color.
Yeah, and that felt like that. I don't know. It felt kind of doable to me. So yeah, I got really into doing pixel art stuff, and this was like this was after a few years after uni. Like I started using DeviantArt like properly for the first time, and I started putting this stuff on DeviantArt, and then on Tumblr a little while after that. And I did like my first comic. Basically, it was like a printed comic with a couple of stories in it, and they were both in pixel art, but it was like printed pixel art, and it was in hindsight it's a really weird idea, but I think it kind of the strangeness of like seeing the kind of crunchy pixels on the page, like kind of caught people's eye, and then that kind of got me back into drawing more, I feel like, because I for some reason just thinking about stuff in pixels, I think it's because it's like it puts a constraint on the kind of things that you can do. Like you can only do certain types of lines, so you can do like sort of diagonals really easily, you can do like straight lines really easily, but then to do like not quite diagonal, not quite straight lines, you have to do like really odd kind of arrangements and stuff like that. So it was like a fun little puzzle to work out how drawings could be made like that, and for some reason having to puzzle that out made me stop worrying about the style as much, and this I feel like from that point onward the kind of air quotes style stuff kind of started to happen a lot more easily.
I know what you mean. It's like working within limitation always breeds creativity, and I believe in it so wholeheartedly, and I've learned that like personally I end up doing better work when I have a lot of limitations, and sometimes I have to put them on myself, and then I'm like, oh well, if I can only use these two colors, then I have to be creative with my use of them. Or if I can, or even like I'm drawing this little chibi Rock Lee, and it's like, man, if all I got is like a big head and like small limbs, it's like you got to make the most of that. Like and sprites and pixel art is so great for that, because you're forced into a style, I guess, and so it's really helpful. And plus, like, I love how you can get a lot out of a little with pixel art. Like, you can like imply a texture with just like a few well-placed pixels. I don't know. It's really fascinating.
It's totally no, I completely agree, and I think that gave me an appreciation for that kind of stuff. Like, am I right in thinking is chiaroscuro? Is that? I'm gonna Google that.
Chiaroscuro is like the art of like shading.
Oh, interesting.
And like and all that.
Maybe it's that. It's the thing where like it's difficult to draw human noses from the front on, because obviously the length and depth of them kind of gets lost in that. So trying to draw a nose on a human is like, you kind of have to come up with tricks to do it, and I think that it's like trying to if you're trying to draw a nose on like a pixel character that's like 20 pixels tall or something like that, you really have to like think about like, okay, what, and it sometimes isn't the like the place that you would think, like the way, sometimes you would think like, oh, you just draw like a little, like a little nose shape, like you would in a regular size drawing, but that doesn't work. So you have to resort to some kind of weird arrangement of pixels that if you stop to think about it, it's like, wow, that looks really weird. But then when you're looking at it in the context of the image from the correct distance and stuff, it kind of starts to, it just works for some reason. You see the nose. But...
what's fascinating is like, have you seen those comparisons of how games on like Super Nintendo and Nintendo looked on CRT TV?
Yes.
Oh, it's so fascinating. Because it's like everyone, when a lot of stuff gets emulated, they always give it, the crisp like pixel treatment, and everything's HD. But like they weren't meant. I just kind of learned about this. I really like learned about it earlier this year, and seeing those comparisons, I was like, oh, they were supposed to be seen blurry and stretched out slightly, and this and that, and it's like, got it, okay. And that's why it looks a little weird the way I've been playing it on emulators for all these years. So like now I understand the appeal of a CRT TV.
And talking like colors and stuff, there's like famous examples like the Link to the Past link with the like where his in-game sprite has like like a weird purple,
Yeah.
like purple hair that doesn't exist on any of the other official art, just because of color limitations or whatever. I can't remember the exact story behind it, but yeah, stuff like that. And sometimes those decisions end up becoming like really kind of iconic design decisions that stick with things.
Totally. Yeah, there was a YouTube video essay that I was watching. I think it's New Frame Plus. I think his name's Dan Floyd, but he did a video about the animation in Final Fantasy 1 and how that, talk about bare bones. Like, it was interesting because it's like they have like I don't know, 5, 6 like each fighter or character class has like 6 sprites, and they just alternate, and they like reused the magic for the celebration pose, and it's like, yeah, all that stuff is like so interesting. Like, and again, it's like they had all those limitations, so they had to be smart, and all of those designs ended up becoming iconic because they had to be iconic to make sense in that tiny of a sprite, you know. So
yeah,
like you get strong design choices out of it.
Yes, definitely. I did another thing that I picked up at uni that I kind of made use of just in my role as a generalist, was that I picked up some 3D animation as well, or 3D animation software. I think it was 3D Studio Max, which meant that I could do that like a little bit on some jobs. Like I was never like as good at it as like the specialists on it, but I could kind of dip my toe in it if needs be. And one of the jobs that I did with that was like an animation that was going to be each frame of the animation was going to be 3D printed.
Oh wow!
And that was really fun. Like, it was like a little sort of model. I think it was a guy with a pickaxe, kind of just swinging a pickaxe, and it was just going to be a loop. And I had this like we just had this really fun back and forth with like the production and the people that were paying for it, like budgeting it and stuff, because they could literally only afford to like get a certain number of 3D models printed. So like within the budget that they had. So I had to animate, like I had to really pick and choose like which frames of the animation were like important, if you know what I mean. Like that sort of frame budget thing was really fun. And you get that kind of stuff as well with you know, like, I mean, video games in general, but fighting games have it a lot, obviously, because like certain attacks have to, like, this to be a fair attack, this has to last, you know, X many frames. So that means you have X many frames in which to sort of to fill that up. So yeah.
How did you first get into working into TV animation?
For TV animation, so I've been really lucky in that like a lot of the people who I went to university with have gone on to sort of get into that kind of stuff, and I feel like kind of the way I've done this is by writing on their coattails. So I went to the same university. It's called Kingston in the south west of. It's just to the southwest of London. It's like a little bit outside London, which is quite nice. And a guy a couple of years above me, there was Matt Lazell, who moved to LA, and I think he like co-created Apple and Onion with George Gendy, and has since, I think he's
Battle Kitty.
He's been working on Battle Kitty, which I was lucky enough to be able to do some work on.
Oh, cool.
That is so
awesome.
cool.
I'm really like, I don't know, like, because I did some very, very minimal sort of viz dev stuff really early on, and I got to see a little bit more of it since then, but I haven't seen. Yeah, I'm very eager for it to all come out because I want to see how it looks when it's all finished.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
But yeah, so he was, when he was in the UK, I got some jobs with him. Like I actually worked on like there was like a really early pilot of Apple and Onion that I ended up doing a bit of animation on in Cartoon Network in London, which was like, this is years ago, like 2014 or thereabouts. And then I think the next one was another guy from that same university. He was from the year below me, a guy called James Lancet, who also works as like an animation director. Who's been, I worked on like a show pilot for him that he was pitching to, I think, Disney at the time. And that was really cool. I did backgrounds in that and a little bit more viz dev as well. And then Amphibia has been like my first actual like full series that I've worked on. Like, so I don't want to like claim any more experience than I actually have. Like, I feel like I'm still relatively like green to this whole to like TV animation. But we were lucky enough to get like 3 seasons out of Amphibia, so like that's been like more or less 3 years worth of work, like not all together, but like for the last 3 or so years I've been working on it, which has been amazing for like a first proper job.
Yeah,
that's really interesting, because I feel like I've known your art for such a long time. Like, I feel like I've followed you since like the Tumblr days, and I guess I thought like you were just kind of, yeah, I guess you were doing comics at the time, because I remember buying like your how do you pronounce it, no bro, no bro,
yeah. No, I think I feel like I've been on, yeah, just like pottering around on social media for ages. But yeah, I guess I think, what would it have been like? Yeah, I posted a lot of comics online on Tumblr, and then I had the tarot card set. I feel like that was where like a lot of people found out about me from, was when I started uploading those tarot cards. Like, I designed my own tarot deck.
It's so good. It took me a long time to finally get it, because I think I got your second print and I was like, oh, those cards are so good. Those are actually, you modeled them not after the Rider-Waite, right? Or was it after the Rider-Waite, or like the one from Crowley?
A bit of both. Like, honestly,
okay.
Like they honestly, I modeled like bits and pieces of stuff I like. I was really opportunistic, basically. Like with any kind of stuff relating, like with that stuff with magic and all like divination and things like that. It's not something that I sort of buy into on a literal level at all. So yeah. I'm not like, and I don't think people should be too precious about the symbols. I think it's like important that kind of the symbology kind of changes. But I'm very capable of just mining the existing symbols, like kind of as and when I like. So if there was like a card that I really like in the Rider-Waite that I felt really like, I want to draw that for mine, then I would just do that. And if it's but again with that, like, that was such a nice project, because I gave myself the restriction of like the format, the brush that I was using, and like each one had to have like, I think like between like 6 and 10 colors or something like that.
Yeah.
And other than that, it was like kind of I would just like do one in an evening, you know, like it was just like super quick. I wouldn't overthink it. So sometimes for a card I would just draw something that, like an image that kind of came to my head at that time, and then that just becomes the image. And I think that's really cool too. So it's like a mixture of traditional and not traditional, I guess.
That's really cool. How long have you been doing tarot? Like before you
I've been buying decks forever, just because I really like decks of cards. I also like buying like nice regular decks of cards as well, because like I really like card magic. I'm not like good at it at all, but like there's a couple of very like easy but impressive tricks that I know, which are kind of fun to pull out occasionally. Or sorry, not to like big myself up too much, but they're like impressive in that, like, if I do them, they reliably make people go like, "Whoa, that's amazing!"
I'd be stunned. I promise you.
I hope that we get to meet in real life, because I want to see those tricks so bad now.
Yeah. I love sleight of hand.
Yeah, it's so good. It's like such a good. It's like an art. It's great.
Do you know about?
It really is. Yeah.
Do you know about? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I do think magic, like sleight of hand, like type magic, is very much related to animation in the way that it is like a stage type of performance. So it is entertainment, and it is also an art form where you have to manipulate your audience attention in order to entertain them. Exactly. So it is I don't know. I just like, I don't know if you've seen that documentary. It's called An Honest Man, and it's about this, what's his name? Let me just Google it really fast. It's so interesting. He's a magician who is kind of like a life purpose on top of like being an extraordinary magician. He was always kind of debunking people who pretended to have like ESP or like, you know, because he was like,
oh yeah,
Oh, James Randi.
yes,
Yeah.
James Randi, yeah. Yeah, the documentary was so cool because he's like really, yeah.
Oh, an honest liar. That's what it is. Yeah.
An honest liar. Oh man. Okay, I
close.
almost got that right.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And he kind of he explains that a little tiny bit. That he's like, yeah, magic is like magic is not good, but what's the word? It's just like the power of it is like in the awe, I guess, more it's in like
the presentation, less about the, because I think he said, I might be wrong, but I think it was more about like, the way I remember it is that it's like it's not real. Like magic isn't real. Like that's not the fun part about it.
Yes.
It's the fact that somebody could study this and become good enough at it to make you think that it is.
Oh,
like that's the part.
Wait, I think he said that like the audience trusts the magician to kind of impress them, or like there's like something that deals with trust, which I thought was like really, really insightful. It's like you're suspending your disbelief in order to be entertained. You're not suspending your disbelief in order to be taken advantage of. I think that's kind of like the whole idea. And I was like, oh, that's so cool, because that's kind of, I think to some extent it's kind of like one of the I guess what's the word, responsibility we have when we make entertainment animation.
That's really interesting. I would have never connected the two, but I can see it because it's like animation, so much of it is, 24 drawings a second moving fast. People believe that it's real and then and form fandoms. And so like, and have opinions about characters. And it's like, but it's all an illusion. Like it's not, none of it's real.
None of the characters are real. None of the drawings are actually real. The drawing itself is real, but it doesn't represent like anything that's real. So there's kind of like this pact that you're making. Anyway, huge tangent. Just really excited that you're into magic. Magic school.
You're the first. I think you're the first magician on the show.
Yes.
I don't know if I'd self-describe as a magician.
You're a magician. But, I'm assigning you that title. Because we haven't had anybody else who does that, as far as I know. Actually, I don't know. Okay. That's really cool. You've done a lot of stuff. It's amazing to see how many interests you have. I really love the animations you do about the Buddhist. What are they called?
Like martial arts kind of stuff, or Cohen's. Sorry.
Yes.
Cohen's.
Yeah. They're and I like had to research it after you did your last like animated one, because I was like, what is this? And
what does this mean?
I don't get it. Yeah, because I'm stupid. I have zero Zen, but I had to look it up, and I was like, oh, this is fascinating. The idea that like each one is just like, there is no logic, there is no reason. You have to just let go. I find that really interesting.
Are you?
And
would you say you're big into spirituality, Joe? Is this something that you're like kind of?
Not really. Like, it's not something I would lead with if I was to meet somebody new and they would ask me like, oh, what are you into? It's not one of the things that I would say I'm sort of, it's like a big part of my life. I think I like some very, it's the same way I like anime, right? And I could probably go up to somebody and say like, hey, I'm Joe Sparrow, I'm an anime fan, but that feels like a little bit, because I like certain anime. There are certain anime that I like that I think are really, really great, and there's a lot of like dross out there, in the same way with kind of new agey spiritualism stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I'm just like, it just doesn't really interest me that much. Tarot is one of the things that does. I'm interested in kind of just like religious stuff, like quite a lot in general, as well. But there's plenty of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of any other spiritual things. And the Zen Koans thing, I got that from like, there's a book called Gödel, Escher, Bach, which I would recommend. Like I always recommend, like you'll find like fans of this book, and they always I don't know, they're always really weird. It's like this book by a guy called Douglas Hofstadter, who's like talking about like how the drawings of Escher and the music of Bach are kind of similar.
You know You know what's so funny? Sorry, I just got really excited because my dad actually got our local library when we lived in a like little town in France. The town was so small that we had to go to like a bigger town, like next door to like kind of like go to a library. And he got the librarian to order this book that you're talking about, the good old. It's so funny. It's like
I think maybe have we talked about it on Twitter before? I think I might have.
I think we might have like tweeted about it like a little bit. Maybe I already tweeted this story at you. It's so funny. It's such a specific book, and it like because it's like I don't know. My dad will keep talking, like he still talks about it now, and he like probably got this book like I don't know 20 years ago, and it makes a big impression on people because it does like kind of link those three different disciplines together. And
but yeah, and all the sort of, I mean, there's lots of stuff in there. It's all really cool. Lots of like really esoteric math stuff that I can't quite fully get my head around, but I sort of understand the broad strokes of it, I think, and it's quite interesting. I also like Bach as a musician as well, but also in this book that there's like a big part of the book is the idea of paradox and of things that don't make sense and can't make sense. And I feel like, and he uses a lot of Zen koans as kind of illustrative metaphors and stuff in it that are about that, and that's where I got into like koans from that. And there's like a few books, there's like a few collected books of them, and I made the animation of one of them. There's what's it called? Gute's Finger, that's it. About like a monk, about a monk that gets his finger cut off, and they're like hilarious as well. They're really funny.
Yeah,
they're really absurd. They're like really good jokes, and maybe it's possible that like people who are like take them super seriously would maybe see that maybe me saying that is disrespectful, but I do think the humor for me is like a sort of an important part of them.
Seems like they're intended to be I mean lighthearted, at least. I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, I really like them, and I find them quite inspiring in terms of wanting to make comics about them and animations about them and stuff.
I think it's just cool that you gave it like this. It's like a whole separate world almost. Like it's not the way that you present these characters. It's really cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. What kind of like visual inspirations do you pull from? Because you have obviously tons of stuff that you are influenced by, but you have such a specific look to your art where it's very like volumetric. I don't know. Is there anything that comes to mind that like you really were inspired by earlier on?
I mean, we were talking. I have mentioned it on Twitter before, and it was one of the prompts. Naruto was like one of the things that informs that. There's like Kishimoto's stuff, and also one of his assistants on Naruto who went on to draw his own comic later on, which is also really good. He just draws these creatures that are like. He just draws these things that look like plastic toys.
Yeah.
And I've always really liked that. Who else is? There's a couple of other things. There's we were talking about Final Fantasy before, so Final Fantasy 9. Okay. My mum bought me this book of like the art book of Final Fantasy 9 when I was a kid. Just because I thought I think I thought it was like a game guide kind of thing.
Oh, sure.
There were those like Prima or Prima or whatever game guides that you get. And I think I thought it was one of those, but it isn't. It's just like an art book, and it's just got all of it's got the lovely Amano drawings. But I was kind of more into the turnarounds of the characters and the swords and like even the way that like the chests look, because it was the first time I realized like, okay, if they're gonna make a 3D game, and like the script says there's a room with a big chest in it, like somebody has to like figure out how this chest looks, and I think that game is fantastic as well, because they managed to impart like every item almost in the game with like character. They're like these chunky kind of cartoony objects that sort of convey so much about the people that use them and stuff.
Definitely.
So that's another one. I'm trying to think of another one. I feel like Kaiba has had a big
that I can see for sure
as well. So that's like Kaiba. It's hard to search for online because it's Kaiba, which is also the name of one of the characters from Yu-Gi-Oh!
Fucking Seto Kaiba, has
Yeah.
buried the search results.
If you put in Yuasa's name with it, Kaiba Yuasa, it's easy to find. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's how I found it. Because it's a series, an anime series that came out. Just for anyone who doesn't know, it's by this director called Masaki Yuasa, who has like. He's another one of those people who I sort of strive to emulate a little bit with the more relaxed kind of approach to art, because especially if you see him now, if you follow him on Twitter, you see he just posts these like crazy little GIFs that he's clearly just like doodled in like the space of like 30 seconds or something like that. You know what I mean? Like he's very free with his designs. But Kaiba in particular is my favorite series of his, partially because it's like kind of melancholy sci-fi.
It's very unique.
Which I love melancholy sci-fi stuff. And partially because it just has this like chubby kind of. It kind of makes me think of like, like vinyl toys. Is what I like to sort of think of it as.
I can see that.
Like everything's made of this like pillowy, marshmallowy substance.
I love that look.
Would you say Tezuka maybe a little bit also? Are you like a Tezuka fan?
Totally.
Yeah.
Not like I haven't read as much of his stuff as I ought to have, although I could say that for like most people, honestly. What have I? So I do remember liking Metropolis a lot. You know the film that I don't know if I don't think he was involved in it personally, was he? But like
I don't think so, but it definitely like oozes his influence.
Yeah.
Because the manga. I think they stayed pretty close to the manga.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But like I can't remember because I don't know when he died. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure he died before it came
so.
out.
I'll do some research.
But that one really stuck with me because it's like it's really visually striking because it's got the kind of simple kind of chunky kind of like I want to say chibi, but it's like not in the kind of kawaii kind of huge eyes kind of chibi that you would associate with the word, but it's like they kind of have like these chunky kind of dwarf child bodies.
Very like thick limbs,
yeah, and big hands and feet and stuff. But then the designs are quite simple, but then they also have like this incredibly detailed kind of like machinery that they can kind of like that they're standing against and that they can kind of break apart into, because obviously it involves a lot of cyborgs kind of getting sort of shot apart and stuff like that. Kind of this Akira level of like detail.
He died like 12 years before that came out, so he was not involved in the movie at all.
Right. But yeah, that one sticks with me as like an influence. What's another one? Like I think I read. Is it called Dororo?
Oh yeah.
Dororo.
The samurai.
The little samurai guy. Yeah.
The samurai with like and I really like that that story just as like a setup for a story, because it's like this kid that when he was a baby, his like he basically got sacrificed to like appease a bunch of demons, like like 100 demons, and like each part of his body as a baby is like given to the demons. So he's literally, by the end of it, he's just like, I think he's just like a torso. It's kind of gruesome.
He's like missing all his organs. It's like total fairy tale fantasy because it's ridiculous. But I read that collected edition. It's interesting because like a lot of manga, especially from further back, like it doesn't end, like it doesn't have an ending, and I wonder if that's more of a Japanese thing, because I think a lot of Japanese media doesn't seem to worry about an ending. It's just like it's and I wonder if it's just because the storytelling style is just kind of different going further back, and my Western brain is like, where's the 3-act structure? I need an ending. But like, and I read Dororo and I was like, this doesn't really end. but why should it? It's just a continuing story of this guy, like, is searching for his pieces.
I would say it's also like maybe like the pre-publication nature of it. It was just kind of like
That's
he
true.
was just drawing so much manga. It's so insane.
It really was.
That it's like he was just like published in a couple different. I think he was published in a couple different magazines, and it's just like, just draw it, cash in the check, draw the next one, and it's like if your series get canceled, or he's probably at a stage too where it's like, if I don't want to finish it, I don't have to, kind of thing.
Probably. Yeah, I just got sick of it. I've done enough. Having that kind of awareness is good. I think that those are all awesome info. I love hearing that kind of stuff, because I love kind of piecing together where people's influences come from, and like that's really cool. We love to ask how our guests deal with creative block and what it kind of feels like for you, and how you cope with it, and etc.
So yeah, I think it's not so much, well, for me it's not often that I feel super like blocked, in that like I feel like I don't, there's nothing I kind of want to work on, if that makes sense. I don't know if this might not end up being super helpful, but like but if you bear with me, it's like because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that I read or look at that I'm kind of inspired by in one way or another. So I tend to not really run out of things to draw. My main problem is like getting too like sort of stressed or like angry about my drawings. Like it's that stuff I was talking about earlier, about like kind of putting too much pressure on myself to sort of to produce something good. And that can kind of, I guess that's how I get blocked up, is like specifically it's like I just feel like I get really anxious and angry and scared of drawing, and like that is something I've been trying to, I think I'm getting better and better at dealing with it. For me, I think I've realized over the last few years that in order to get into like, people talk about like flow, like getting into like a flow state kind of thing. I find it feels really good when I get into that sort of state, and also I tend to make much better work whenever I get into that kind of state. So I've kind of identified that like if I'm not in that state, I need to get there before I can start drawing again, if that makes sense. So if I get really frustrated with my drawings, I literally try and do, or with anything really, I make it a priority to do stuff that I know kind of is satisfying or makes me happy. So in terms of drawing, I think I spoke about this on Twitter at some point. Because I go out and I do like drawing on kind of location a lot, just like taking a sketchbook out, and I really like cross-hatching, like, which is something that it's funny, because if you look at like, the stuff I do for Amphibia, or the stuff I do, a lot of the finished stuff that I do is quite like simple lines, and like there's not a lot of kind of hatching or detail to it or anything like that. But I find it really satisfying. Like this, like I think I got it off of like reading Crumb when I was younger, like that kind of stuff. And it's obviously he's an artist with his own that's its whole own other thing. But I just really enjoyed that kind of stuff, like figuring out volume with cross hatching is really nice.
I agree.
So I just do that. Like I'll just pick an object in my house or go out on a walk and just do that, and kind of just like lose myself in it and try and get kind of in a better mood before I go back to the drawing, if that makes sense. And like forgiving yourself for not being able to sort of do the drawing the way you want it to is another one. Like kind of accepting that not every drawing is going to be like a success,
right?
But that even the unsuccessful ones are kind of like steps on the way to a successful one, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's really great. Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot. It's actually great advice. It's really good.
Yeah. So yeah, just like, because I yeah, there's just, it's easy to just think like, you know, if you can't draw a certain thing, it's just easy to get really like bummed out because it's like, oh, it just feels like a failure. But it's like, no, that was just like an attempt, and the next time you draw it, it's going to be informed by the things that you learned by doing this kind of failed attempt, if that makes sense.
Yeah, my part of the reason why I don't like to show my like rough drawings is because my sketchbook, when I only really doodle when I'm trying to develop like new characters or concepts, and my sketchbook pages are just the same face or the same design over and over and over again, and it's like and they're small, like I do these tiny little thumbnail sized drawings of characters. It's almost like sprites, you know, like I was, like we were talking about pixel art. It's like I want to force myself to have a design work when it's really small, and I'm like, nobody can decipher this. Like nobody will be able to look at this page and understand it. But it's just continuous failure. It's like aggressive continuous failure to work through all of the mistakes. Because it's like when I was a kid, I would do one character drawing and I would nail it, and then I would never be able to draw it the same way again, and that sucked. You know, like I realized that is not a healthy way to do it, and so now I just like shit it out as many times as I can to like form. I don't know if this makes sense, but it's like I gotta form the character in my head through all those little throwaway drawings and not commit to only one nicely drawn version of them. Somebody might relate to that. I don't know. We have a ton of awesome questions from our friend at Ferocia. What are some challenges you faced being an artist overseas working for US studios?
Not like surprisingly few. Like I was kind of, so I've done, I think I've previously also, hi Ferocia.
Hi Ferocia.
My colleague from Amphibia. So when I started the Amphibia, or just before I started Amphibia, so like I did probably familiar process to most sort of freelance artists. I did like a little art test, and they were like, "Yeah, this looks cool. We'd like to get you on the show." There was a period of time where I was like, it was like honestly discussed like, is he gonna have to like move to LA? Like, am I gonna have to do that? And I sort of explored it as an option a lot, and yeah, but basically due to a number of factors, decided to remain in the UK. And it's been, and I was definitely like went into it with some trepidation, but it honestly has been pretty smooth. We had a system on Amphibia where I would do, like I think they would have art reviews on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I would basically have to, I would give my sort of production, so the person I was corresponding with in production, a zip, like, or a RAR, you know, like a sort of compressed folder of files every Tuesday and every Thursday. And it would come back with feedback. So it's one thing I felt a bit guilty about. This is one thing. Okay, so like one thing I feel bad about is that I wasn't around, because I think they would do these, art reviews in person in a, like with people there, and I never really involved myself in that. It was always like stuff would get reviewed and then they would just send stuff back to me with notes.
Right.
And I'm aware that's a bit different from the kind of the norm. But I kind of liked it that way. But I do feel like if I was a bit braver, like if I was there in person, I think it would have made me a bit braver to just like be in a room with people and actually like have to show my work and hear people's feedback and stuff. Because I think I get a little bit sort of cowardly about that kind of stuff. And I always sucked that I wasn't able to see the pitching as well.
Yeah.
Because that's something I'm like. So I know that this is the subject of some discourse recently with like storyboard artists, but like storyboard artists are like literally amaze me. Like the fact that you have to like you have to draw so quickly and so well, and also kind of perform in front of people as well.
Yeah,
is crazy.
Too much.
Yeah,
the performance aspect is like, that's definitely something that like was when I moved, because when I was working in France, I never had to pitch, until I moved to the US, and it was so scary because everyone's so good. Like, I don't know, Americans are just good at performing.
Yeah, I think so.
It's in the culture. It is in the culture. I mean, there's like show and tell. There are like so many things that's like built into school where like there's a lot of room for people to try it out and fail in like a safe setting before you get into like professional life, I think. So it's like
that's interesting. I would have never known that that's like a difference from culture to culture.
Show and tell is a very American thing. I don't know, do you guys do show and tell in the UK?
I mean, we would have to do they would make us do, you know, sort of class presentations and stuff like that. Show and tell specifically, I don't think is a thing in the UK, at least where I went to school. But there were definitely people that like excelled at that kind of stuff. I just happened to not be one of them.
Is there like spelling bees?
There must be.
Okay.
I think it's less of a thing than in America. Like it's less. There's a lot of things that are kind of within the mythology of America.
Yeah, that's true.
This is some.
Yes.
This is some. Yeah.
I don't think I ever did a spelling bee.
Even like stuff like mathletes or anything where people are on the stage performing some kind of talent, I think is way more American. Like because you can have any sort of talent that you can do on stage. Like mathletes is like who does like equations on a stage? Americans.
Everything's a sport. We turned math into a sport.
It's really interesting. But it's really cool. It's really interesting. Yeah. So performing, like pitching and but that's kind of like, I feel like that's a skill that, I don't know, once you practice a little bit, you don't have to be an actual actor. You don't have to be like Hollywood.
I think I think it was something that I in my heart of hearts I'd like to be able to do, and I feel like if I was around other people doing it as proficiently as they clearly were on the production of Amphibia, I think it would have. I'd like to think it would rub off on me a little bit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
But and also as well, I should say the social aspects obviously gave me a lot of FOMO. That is like not inconsequential as well. The crew were like such nice people on Amphibia, particularly. And I think, and we were obviously, especially during the pandemic, because obviously everything changed then. We all sort of started using the work Slack a lot more, and the work Slack's been amazing for that. But yeah, if they were doing like IRL meetups and stuff, I would like, you know, I sort of feel like, oh, it would be so nice to be there. In LA, but I was able to go there once, which was cool. I went there in 2019 in the summer, literally only for a couple of days, unfortunately. But I did get to sort of meet most of the people, at least who were working on season 2, in person. So that was really nice. And we've done we've done the odd group call and stuff this year, but definitely it's different. Being on the other side of, but work wise, it's been completely fine. Like the people, I feel like the people in production have been like kind of amazing at making all that kind of flow seamlessly, like despite not being in the same time zone or anything like that.
I was gonna say about the time zone. That's a tricky thing.
Do you by any chance like have any like people that you had like a workshop type of setting, or like, I mean, pre-pandemic obviously, or like co-workers, like do you just work at home by yourself?
I am a complete homebody. I've worked from home for the most part. When I was doing freelance animation or just freelance work in London, I would like commute to specific studios in London. So there's a few in like the Hoxton area that I would go to. That's like where most of them that I do seem to be. So I would like travel up there, and yeah, I miss that, and I'm probably gonna have to, you know, now that I'm sort of looking for work again at the moment. I will hopefully, I mean, once the pandemic eases up, I'll be able to do some of that again. But honestly, working from home, just being alone by myself the whole day, it doesn't really negatively affect me that much, which has been great for the last year. Obviously, that it hasn't. I don't think it's made me like too insane, sort of working from home this much.
Yeah. We have another question from @C.Dobbins. What are some of the most important things to keep in mind when designing characters? Is there anything you think is frequently overlooked but essential?
I think. So it's not. I don't think this is overlooked necessarily. It's like stuff that other character designers would probably say as well. But like silhouette is like a really kind of important thing, I think, with characters. Or it's a different projects will have different visual languages and different things that you can do with the characters. But I personally really like it when characters are like super distinct from each other, silhouette wise. But I appreciate in a lot of shows, you are limited by that because they might only be able to like, you might need all the characters to be a certain size so they can fit in a certain space, or they might have, like, a lot of shows now are doing kind of semi-rigged 2D animation, which is a bit more restrictive in terms of that kind of stuff. I tend to think about color like very early on in the process. That was something that weirded me out actually when I started doing when I started doing work on sort of American productions, like when I was doing, so I did that one episode on Adventure Time, which now means I can say, oh, I worked on Adventure Time.
Hell yeah.
Great. Which was the Minecraft episode, and they basically got me into like to kind of figure out. They got me initially to do some viz dev to sort of figure out how to mesh the Minecraft style with the Adventure Time style, and they liked what I did, so they got me in to do some like actual character design work on it as well. And they were like, I didn't realize that like kind of that kind of work, you as a character design, you tend to just do the line work, the black and white line work. You don't tend to give them colors, because I gave them just like colored character designs for like all of the characters for that episode that I had to do. Yeah, and they were like, oh no, you don't have to do that, like we have like color stylists and stuff here. I was like, oh shit. So that's been something that's been it's a little bit weirder than my usual. I feel like if I'm just designing characters by myself, I almost like sketch them out. I have a tendency to sketch them out in blobs of color before I even do like line work on them, just because I feel like that's like just a way. I guess partially just because it's fun, just because
sure,
it's like,
yeah,
you can see the little red hair and they've got a blue vest on, and whatever. But it's just the way I visually approach things, I think.
Is that like something that you kind of had to unlearn? Because usually there is a color stylist, and so like,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can see if you have the ownership of a character, you would probably want to have a suggestion of color. So is that something that you were told not to do?
Did. Yeah, no, it was never. I was never told I couldn't do it. I was for some characters, I would have kind of an idea of what I wanted the colors, or what I imagined the colors to be in my head. So I would in addition to giving them the sort of the line work, I would do like a color suggestion, just like, this is what I think could work with this. But after a while, especially after I'd see like the kind of like the amazing work that our color stylist did on Amphibia, which is a show that has some like really really gorgeous color work on it. I think I would only do that if I had like a really specific thing in mind, and also only as a suggestion. I would never be like, okay, this has to be like this, because I'm aware that like color stylists have a lot of kind of considerations to be making other than just what looks pretty to me. Like, stuff has to fit within with other characters. It has to fit on a certain background palette, etc., etc. So that was something. It was a little bit weird. Like, there's certainly designs that I've done where I would draw them in black and draw them in outline, and then add color to them, and realize, and the adding color would reveal a bunch of like issues with the design that I would then have to go and rework. And that still happens. It still would happen occasionally, but like I had to learn my way around that a little bit.
Yeah.
Just thinking about stuff in terms of lines and whatnot.
Yeah. at GamerDude5002 asked, hello, Joe Sparrow. Just want to say I'm a huge fan and you're super talented and deserve the award for the Halloween episode, The Shut-In. It's very nice.
Thank you.
And their question is, what was your biggest motivator or motivation that got you to where you are today?
What's the biggest motivation? I'm not sure how to. It's a really good question, but I'm not sure. How to
it's a doozy. But I thought, that's like
good.
what is kind of pushing you along, and this also might tie into the question we asked, which is like, what are your goals for the future? I think that's also a good way to think of it.
I think I obviously just like motivated by the idea of getting better at this, because I think in this, it's like, it is a negative thing with social media and stuff, that you get bombarded, or if you seek them out, you can get bombarded with just like all the cool stuff that other people are doing, and I'm very aware of like the amazing stuff that my sort of colleagues and contemporaries and stuff are doing, and that can be it can be negative, but it can also be really positive. And I do it a lot of the stuff I see lately, especially I think this last year, I have felt more inspired by really inspired by a lot of the art that I've seen people making online. And it's like, when you look at stuff, it does throw up kind of shortcomings in one's own art, or just like the way I'd like to be able to do stuff. So it makes me want to strive to do better. Like at the moment, I mean, and yeah, this will probably come up in that next section, like you said, but like doing comics, for example, I've had it like I think some of the reasons I wanted to do comics in the first place were like these kind of long form sort of fantasy comics that I would read when I was a kid. So I'd read like Nausicaa's one that I always name check, because I read Nausicaa when I was like kind of little, and it made a really strong impression on me. And I really want, like, I read one volume and I was like, I really want to know what happens next in the story. I want to see where they go and like what they do and stuff. And I really want to be able to do something like that. And I feel like I'm kind of working my way up to it in terms of because I have tried to write like longer comics before, like, I'm sure everyone has their go at like, oh, I'm going to write my epic fantasy novel, when you're 18 or 16 or whatever. And it doesn't quite work, and then you get really disheartened. So what I'm trying to, or in my case anyway, and so I feel like what I've been trying to do in the last few years is to try and write kind of just like a little bit longer and a little bit longer comics and a little bit longer, just like keep sort of improving, or increasing that one thing little by little, because there's a thing that I want to be able to do at the end of it, which is like a multi-book series or something, so I guess that's something that motivates me to do, or that has motivated me to sort of get where I am. I guess another thing that has motivated me just on a practical level is that I enjoy it, and that there's lots of, like, it sounds mushy, but like there's a lot of really, really nice people that I get to work with and I get to interact with on a daily basis, and that genuinely makes it worth it to me to do this rather than to do, I don't know, like some other job. The people involved in this industry do tend to be really nice. So yeah, that's another thing.
I think that's a really nice place to actually wrap it up.
I
think cool. I don't know much more, because I think that's great. I think you can just plug your stuff, man. I want to hear where people can find you.
Stuff. Sure. So if you one of the issues with Amphibia is that there is now a character in Amphibia called Joe Sparrow. Yep. So that's I'm fighting with with that goddamn bird for Google results. But if you Google Joe Sparrow, you'll probably find me. If my Twitter is @torpordust, TORPOR dust, all one word. I think I'm the same on Instagram. That's another one.
Where does that name come from?
It's a random magic card, or not like it's a magic card that I just liked when I was in uni, and I thought I don't know, it's a bit like, it's like one of those cellar door kind of things. It's like, I just like those two words together, like torpor dust.
Torpor dust.
And it just means sleeping powder. Like torpor is like sort of it's like the same root as the word stupor. So it's like fairy dust basically the card is. And yeah, I just sort of picked it and ran with it. And it's sort of stuck. So those, I'm pretty active on both of those. You can buy my book. I guess I should plug my book. Yeah.
Plug your book.
I wrote the last comic that I wrote. I'm writing another comic at the moment, which should be out at some point next year. But you can buy my latest book from Shortbox, which is like an independent publisher based in the UK. They publish tons and tons of cool stuff. My book's called Homunculus, and if you go to shortbox.co.uk, just again Shortbox, like all one word, .co.uk, you can buy it on there, as well as many other comics. And also in a few days' time in October, Shortbox is running like an online comics fair, I think is what they're calling it, where they've basically commissioned like 45 different sort of indie cartoonists to make a new comic. And there's like, I say indie, like some of them are like can't really be labeled as indie. They're like have published books with big publishers and stuff. But I've done a new comic for that, and there's, like I said, there's going to be like 44 others in that. So definitely check that out. I can't think of anything else to plug.
Very cool.
Oh, my website is just joe-sparrow.com. I don't update it. I'm sure. I feel like people always say this, but I don't update it as much as I should. But there's some stuff on there. It's a nice little repository for some of my favorite illustrations that I've done. And also, if you're interested in seeing some of the like older animation work, like the more commercial and music video sort of animation, there's a bit of that on there as well. And yeah.
I was flipping through that earlier, and there's a lot of really cool stuff. It's just cool to see all the different things that you've done over the years and how all of it has such a high bar. It's like, I don't understand how you do it.
Thank you.
I love Homunculus too. A friend of mine lent it to me, and I burned through it, and then I went and bought a copy of my own because it was great. It was an inspiration for one of my band's songs too. So.
I love your band. I was listening to them.
Oh, really? Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
There's a song on the album that you'll probably know what it's like post-apocalyptic robot shit. And so Homunculus was definitely, I was like, this is sad. I was like, this is fucked up, and I want to write a song about it. Yeah, man. Well, that's the end of this creative block. Thanks to Joe for being our guest and sharing his story.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks to our listeners. Follow us on Twitter. It's at Creative Block, creative without the vowels, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to my sister Clemens for editing the podcast.
If you love our show, then support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews as well as bonus episodes. Click the link in the description of this episode. I've been your host, Gene.
And I was V. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.